Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Jenny. I'm from Jenny Card Designs. Thanks so much for joining me today. My YouTube channel contains content that is intended to share paper crafting tutorials and inspiration with all of you. I hope that you enjoy. I've got a couple of things to share with you today. First up, I've got a Gina Designs card kit. I've also got a Crafty Hack and a card project that I'm going to share with you. So let's dive straight into this Gina Designs Let's Celebrate card kit. First up, inside of this kit, we have a bottle of Gina Designs Connect glue, and then we have a Gina Designs blending brush. I like that these bristles are all white. If you have more than one blending brush, I like that you're able to decipher what color family that brush is dedicated for. And then we've got a couple of stamps and dies, and we'll get into those in a moment. And let's pull out this cardstock that comes with this kit. You get 5 sheets of Gina Designs Layering Weight White. This is a really nice, beautiful cardstock for stamping. And then we've got a bunch of dies, and these come on a magnetic storage board, and they are 2 sets of dies that are designed for both of these stamps. So the first stamp set that we're going to take a look at here, we've got the Gina Designs Birthday Bash stamp set, and you've got some beautiful images on here. You need to stamp these images to get a really good grasp of what this set can do, and I was so excited when I saw the samples of this stamp set. So that's fun. And then we've got the Gina Designs Flowing Florals stamp set, and I love the sentiments in this stamp set, and I've got a really cool hack to show you later on in this video. So now we've got these dies, and I'm just going to pull them off of the storage board, and I'm going to set them on top of the stamps so that I can determine which dies go to which stamp set. So I'll just pull them off one by one, and you get the dies for both of those pieces of cake, and the candles, the happy birthday, the birthday wishes, and then you also get 2 separate dies for that layering slice of cake. And you get this little triangle piece for the top of that cake. And then you also get the dies for the flames for the candles. All right, and then we've got the leaves and the floral sprigs and the 3 flowers for this stamp set. And then we have the Birthday Trio die set. Now this comes with a shadow layer and then the words happy and the word birthday. This is a really cool die set it's kind of quite unique and different than most happy birthday dies that are out in the market right now. So I think this one's really fun. So what I'm going to do is pull in my stamp pockets. So when I get new stamps, this is what I like to do. I immediately like to put them into the storage system that I use. And this is what I do. I separate the dies with the stamp sets, and then I put all of the dies that coordinate with that set into a small stamp pocket. And I thought that the happy birthday coordinated with this set, so I'm going to put it inside that pocket with those other dies. And then I'll grab a large stamp pocket, then I'll put the stamp set inside and drop that set of dies in behind. And then that's how I like to store everything. I'll come back later and put a sheet of cardstock inside of my stamp pocket. I just like that extra sheet of cardstock to keep everything nice and sturdy, and then it stands up nicely in my storage system. So that's it for the content of the Let's Celebrate card kit from Gina Designs. If you're interested in this kit, I believe it's still available currently as we speak on Gina's website, and you'll find it listed in the description box down below. Okay, so I have a fun hack to share with you. I started playing with this set. This is something that I like to do when I don't have any ideas. I like to dig through my stamps and find similar style greetings that can be lined up all together and stamped all together. Let me show you what I mean by that. So I've got the stamp set, the Flowing Florals. I've got a mini Misty, a piece of black cardstock, and a paper trimmer. That's where I'm going to start here. So I'm going to go through this set and pull off all of those greetings that are kind of the same size. So we've got happy birthday, get well soon, thinking of you, miss you so much, and so very grateful. So what I'm going to do is start with that happy birthday. I'm going to get it lined up on my Misty, and I realized that I had my Misty mouse pad inside of this, so I just flipped it over, and I'm going to use the grid lines on my Misty mouse pad to help me get that sentiment lined up nice and straight. So once I pick it up, I just check the door of the Misty where there's grid lines on that as well. And I just like to make sure that everything's nice and straight. Because for this technique, we need to make sure that everything is straight, and we only have to do it once. So I'm going to go ahead and line up the second greeting, and I'm using the little grid lines on my Misty mouse pad, and I'm counting 2 grid lines down from the first sentiment. And then I'm going to repeat that for all of these sentiments, moving them down 2 grid lines until they're all set up on the door of my Misty. I'm going to grab a ruler and figure out the size of paper that I'm going to need to make this work. So this is about 4 inches wide by about 3 inches tall. So I figured that's about what I need to make this work. So 3 by 4. So what I'm going to do is take my black cardstock, and I'm going to start cutting 3-inch pieces. So across the 11-inch side, I'm going to cut 3 inches. So it's going to give me a bunch of 3-inch strips, and I'll have a little bit left over. And you can use this little extra. You can stamp some extra sentiments on it, but I don't end up using it. But I just wanted to show you sort of my process on cutting up this cardstock. So I'm going to take those strips now, and I'm going to cut them down to 4 inches. So I'm going to get a total of 6 panels that measure 4 by 3. And then we've got a couple of scraps off to the side. You can use those little strips as dimension for your sentiments and things like that. Okay, so here we go. We've got all these pieces of cardstock, 3 by 4 inches, and the leftover stuff we're not going to use. I'll just kind of push this off to the side. I mean, we can always use black cardstock like this for many, many things. I never throw this away. I keep it. So now I'm going to pull in my heat embossing supplies. I keep everything in this little container here, and I'm pulling out a coffee filter, anti-static powder bag, Versamark ink pad, and some Gina K Designs fine detail white embossing powder, and a paintbrush to flick off excess speckles of embossing powder. And then I also have a little fan brush here too. So my fan brush is just I use this as a sweeper to sweep away excess anti-static powder bag. So here we go. We're going to get set up here. I'm going to grab my first piece of cardstock and put it in the corner of my Misty and use my magnet to make sure it's held down nice and good. I'll grab that anti-static powder bag and I'll pat that all over my cardstock. So this is going to make sure that our embossing powder only sticks to the Versamark ink and nowhere else. Okay, this isn't foolproof. I always get flecks everywhere. I do my best, but hey, it's handmade. It's not perfect, right? Okay, so I'm going to ink up those stamps with my Versamark ink, which is a clear sticky ink. And then I'm going to take my time and press down on each one of those words. I'm not pressing too hard because I don't want to distort the letters, but I do want to make sure that I get a good transfer of that Versamark ink onto my black cardstock. Okay, so I'm going to pick it up nice and gently, make sure that everything transferred nicely and it looks good. And now I'm going to take my coffee filter and I'm going to open that up, drop my piece of cardstock there, and sprinkle my fine detail white embossing powder over top of this cardstock. So I want to make sure that I get good coverage here. We're not going to waste any of this embossing powder because we're going to funnel it all back into the bottle. So don't worry about dumping out your entire bottle. We'd rather get good coverage and then just pour the excess back into the bottle when we're done. And now we'll use that paintbrush to help sweep away those little flecks. Like I said, I get embossing powder everywhere when I do heat embossing. I'm not perfect. There are some tricks that you can do to help clean this up, you know, like a mono sand eraser, things like that. But I don't worry too much. A few little white flicks here and there is not going to bother anyone. So during this time, I've had my heat gun off to the side and it's been warming up. So it's good and hot now. And I'm going to bring it to my paper and I'm going to heat that embossing powder until it's all smooth and melted. And you'll be able to see the difference of the embossing powder because it brightens up and those little powder granules start to melt and they kind of expand and thicken up and can become all shiny. It's really cool. It's really addicting, this embossing thing. Okay, I'm going to take my little fan brush. I'm going to sweep away that extra embossing magic powder that's all over my cardstock here. I want to clean it up to make sure that my cardstock is nice and clean and black and ready to go. So originally I had thought I would use these dies, these sentiment label dies from Gina K Designs, and they don't fit. I was kind of disappointed because I was a little excited that they would fit, and sure enough, they don't. So while I was digging for these, I came across this die set, and this is the Gina K Designs Master Layouts 8, and it's got all these strips on it. Now, if I would have done this more strategically, I could have lined all these sentiments up to be able to cut them out in one shot. You can try that if you want. I didn't. I just went ahead and cut them one by one. I just used the very first row on this die to cut out the bottom sentiment. So it cuts it out perfectly. You have this perfect 1/4 inch sentiment strip. You couldn't get it any more perfect than that. So I really like that. So I'm going to go ahead and run this through 4 more times and get all of my sentiments cut out. And then we'll have 5 sentiment strips that are perfectly cut using this Master Layouts die set. Okay, so there's another alternative to this. You don't have to use dies. You can use a trimmer and you get a great result as well. It's not as skinny as this, but I still like the way it turns out. As a matter of fact, I like it better because it's less time consuming. Let me show you what I mean. So I've got a bunch of those sentiments all stamped. When I started this technique, I stamped and embossed all of those panels that I had cut up. So now I'm going to use my trimmer here and I'm going to line those words up right along the bottom of the characters of the letters to the edge of my cutting guard. And you'll be able to see it. You can, kind of see where those letters line up, and then I'll chop it off. And then you get a perfect sentiment strip. I'm going to show you a comparison between the skinny one and then the regular paper cutter one. They're both beautiful. I prefer the thicker one. So I'm going to go ahead and cut all of my sentiments up the same way, just sliding it in to that little guide and lining the letters up with the tip of that guide and then cutting it off. And you get these beautiful sentiments. They're not perfect, it depends on how much time you spend lining them up, I suppose. But I like the way they turn out. I think that they're quick and simple, and then you've got a ton of greetings for whenever you need it. When you're in your crafty space and you're not quite sure what to do, start stamping some sentiments, because there are other times when you try new techniques and then you end up with backgrounds and things that you're not sure what to do with. Then you can take those backgrounds, your pile of sentiments, and pair them together for quick and easy projects. So I really had fun making these, and I'll have lots for future when I need them. So I'm going to take all of these sentiment strips and I'm going to put them in the little pocket where I keep all of the dies. And then I've got a whole stack of sentiments on hand for the future when I need it. There are some wonderful YouTubers on YouTube, and a famous card maker once said, "Have a leaf, make a wreath." And that was Laura Basson. And it's always stuck in my head. Because I love the Gina K Designs wreath builders, I love making wreaths and I have so much fun with them. There was a new wreath builder released and I had never touched it. I never played with it. I had it in my stash, but never played with it yet. So I've got the large wreath builder and I've just got it popped into my MISTI and got the template taped down. And I'm going to take a piece of the layering weight cardstock that comes inside of this kit, and this is an 80-pound cardstock. So I'm going to cut a panel that measures 5 3/4 inches by 5 3/4 inches. And I'll just load that up into my MISTI, starting in the square orientation. Whenever you make a wreath, you always want to make sure that you start in the square. So this way, when we stamp our images, it doesn't go off the side of the cardstock. So now I'm just going to place this little leafy sprig on this piece of cardstock. And I wasn't confident that I was going to get it right round in a circle, and the inserts to this template have a little circular guide to help sort of line things up. So I popped all of those pieces back into the wreath builder, and it helped me sort of guide my little image to make sure that I was going to get it, sort of circular instead of sticking out. Not sure if that makes any sense, but in my brain it does. Okay, so I'm going to get that stamp picked up and on the door of the MISTI. I'm just going to freeze here for a quick second. I want to identify these 3 corners. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to mark this corner 1, corner 2, and corner 3. Okay, and then I'll ink up my stamp, close the door of the MISTI, and press. Make sure I get a good transfer of my image. Okay, so when I make my first turn, I'm going to take corner 1 and move it to corner 2, if that makes sense. Okay, and then I'll ink up my stamp, close the door of the MISTI and press, and then I'm going to take whatever's in corner 2 and put it to corner 3. Okay, so we went from a square orientation to a diamond, back to a square. And then we're going to repeat again. Ink up my stamp, close the door of the MISTI and press. I'm going to take corner number 1, put it in corner 2, stamp, take corner 2, put it in corner 3, and stamp. And we keep doing this all the way around until we get a full wreath. And I really love this image. It turned out really pretty. It's so full and luscious, and I only used 1 stamp for that. This little leafy sprig is what made me think about creating a wreath. I was really inspired by it, and I wanted to pull out my wreath builder and create this wreath. So next up, I'm going to take one of the images. I like this little sort of bud of a flower. It's kind of open, kind of closed. I'm not exactly sure, but I don't even know what kind of flower it is. I just like the look. So I'm going to figure out my placement on my wreath. I'll get it placed where I want it, and I'll use my fingers to wipe off that manufacturing residue. And then I'm going to stamp this. I'm using Gina K Designs Peach Bellini ink here. And then I'm going to continue with the same process, using those 3 corners I mentioned, corner 1, 2, 3, and just keep rotating 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, until your wreath is full all the way around. The colors that I've used for this wreath are Peach Bellini, Dusty Rose, Wild Wisteria, Blue Denim, Powder Blue, Turquoise Sea, Apple Mint, and then finally Sweet Corn. So I made a beautiful rainbow all the way around my card, and I kind of thought, I think this is enough. I don't really want to do anything else. I didn't want to make it too crazy and too busy, and I've already got a rainbow. I don't want to distract away from that. I thought maybe about putting a sentiment on the center, but I decided against it, and just to leave this wreath plain and simple. And the only thing I wanted to do was add a piece of black cardstock just to create that little pop so that all of my rainbow colors pop off of that wreath. So next I'm going to create a really simple and easy fun fold card. So I'm going to take a piece of cardstock. This is a 120 pound heavy base weight cardstock, and across the 8.5 inch side I'm going to cut this down to 6 inches. Okay, I'm going to take this into my scoreboard, and I made an error when I scored it the first time, so don't worry about those score marks that are there. I'm going to score this at 2.5 inches and then at 5 inches. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and crease those folds. I'm going to use my bone folder to burnish out that crease mark so that you can't see it. And then I'll crease all of the folds here. And then what I'm doing basically is creating the simplest easel card in the world. There's nothing overly the top complicated about it. I've just scored this front panel. The back panel is going to measure 6 by 6 of this card base, but the front is going to measure 6 by 5. So this way we don't need to use an extra piece of cardstock, and it doesn't look like we were short cardstock, but then we don't have to worry about, using 12 by 12. This way we can use what we have on hand, create a really fun easel card, then we end up getting a 6 by 6 card out of a standard piece of cardstock. So I really like the way that works, and this is how this card kind of folds up, and we need to create a little base for the tip of that card to sit on so it'll stay propped up in an easel. So I've got a piece of my black cardstock. I'm just using a scrap here, and I'm going to pull out the Happy Birthday from the Birthday Bash stamp set. I'm just going to line this up on the center of my cardstock. I initially thought I would use that whole strip, but decided against it. I decided to cut it down later. Anyways, we won't worry about that. I'm just going to use my anti-static powder bag, pick up that stamp, and use some Versamark ink and stamp it so that we can heat emboss. Doing the same process as we had done earlier in this video. We're inking up really good with that clear sticky ink. We'll close the door and press. I'll grab some Gina K Designs Fine Detail White Embossing Powder, sprinkle it over this sentiment. In the meanwhile, my heat gun is warming up, and I want to make sure that it's good and hot when I bring it to my paper here. Then I avoid warping that paper, and it melts very quickly, and the results are perfect. I really like this sentiment. It's very clean and simple, but it says exactly what I need it to say. Happy birthday. Okay, so I'm going to grab my trimmer and just trim down that little happy birthday. I wanted to make it a bit smaller, as I mentioned, and I'm going to apply some adhesive to the back of this and prop that up on my card base. I'm just going to kind of hold the frame of my easel to kind of where I want it to sit, and then line up that happy birthday and press it down. And that's it. Super simple, but it's a beautiful result. I love the way this card turned out. I'm going to cut this video off here because my video went a little bit longer than I anticipated today. I've got a really cool envelope template to share with you to create 6x6 envelopes. So I'm going to save that for my next video. So keep an eye out for that. I've got a brand new Jen-Velope Template reference book. This is the 2.0 version of my template book, and it's going to be released within the next few days, and I'll have that video up at the same time so that you can see what we'll be making out of that new book. Okay, so that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend it here with me. I appreciate the support as always. Coming up on screen are a couple of videos that I think you may enjoy, including the entire playlist of my Chop It Up videos. So thanks again for joining me. Have yourself a lovely day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!